Brought to you by Capital Preservation Services, the tax planning team that helps business owners earn more and keep more.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, we'll have John Talty coming up here in a minute. Senior sports editor, SEC Insider on AL.com. Alabama Media Group, at J Talty on Twitter. He spent some time at the Clarion Ledger, by the way. Now he's in Birmingham with AL.com, covering Roll Tide and War Damn Eagle. Welcome in. Our guests join us on the Shinerbach guest line. Pick up some Shinerbach this week. Great beer out of Texas. You can celebrate all the baseball wins by drinking a beer from Texas that Ole Miss and Mississippi State won over the weekend. And Arkansas, for that matter. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. The show is brought to you by Eye Care Professionals, Dr. Kirk Jeffries. Eye Care Professionals. Routine eye exams, blade-free LASIK and cataract surgery. Eye Care Professionals, Dr. Kirk Jeffries on Lakeland Drive. We welcome in John Talty, senior sports editor, AL.com. John joins us on the Shinerbach guest line. John, good morning. How are you, buddy?
Good, man. It's good to talk to you again.
Well, I'm glad you're back on. We thought we'd talk a little War Damn Eagle first before we get into Roll Tide. What has been the reaction from Auburn fans on the Brian Harsin hire, John?
I think there's been, optimism around it. I think it's, like anything, I think at the end of the Gus era, people were, ready to move on. And so just having a new person in there, a new face, a new voice, a new way of doing things. And I think, right now the fan base is in that honeymoon phase where everything sounds pretty good. And, I think there might have been some questions about, how he ended the recruiting period. But, just since after National Signing Day, they've added an impact transfer and then also added, a really highly rated guy who, had signed with Tennessee and then was released after their coaching change. So I think people are happy with how he's kind of finished up even in the post-signing day period. And I think are excited to see what he can do and be different than, what Gus was doing at the end of his tenure there.
Yeah, coach fatigue had set in, like off the charts coach fatigue, wasn't it, John?
Yeah, and I think, part of it was that, for whatever reason, Gus just never really endeared himself to that fan base. And so even when things were going well, I don't think fans were that excited. I think maybe it's a personality conflict or what, but they just didn't seem, especially, after the early success they had in the last, 3-4 years especially, it just felt like every year fans were almost hoping that he would leave for something. When he had an opportunity to go to Arkansas, I think, there was a portion of the fan base that was okay with that, was okay with him leaving for that job. And so I think that it was always just kind of, one stretch away from fans wanting him to go. And, I think losing South Carolina last year and kind of struggling down the stretch made it for a lot of fans like, all right, we're ready to make a change here.
Yeah, hitching his wagon to Bo Nix. Bo looks really, really solid to me, John, and far, far away from really good to great. Your thoughts?
And I think that's going to be a critical part of, especially this first year for Brian Harsin, is just how is he able to develop Bo Nix, and can he elevate him to being one of the top 3 or so quarterbacks in the SEC, especially with so many guys leaving for the NFL. I think, like you said, one of Gus's problems, and I think he did this pretty consistently, was overhyping his quarterbacks. I remember, years ago coming into XC Media Days, and he was talking about how, Jeremy Johnson was one of the best quarterbacks that he's ever coached, and really hyping him up to be a Heisman, and obviously that didn't work out. And so I think he made that same mistake with Bo Nix. I remember, a year ago, him talking about, how Bo Nix is going to win a national championship before he leaves here, and I think it just put unnecessary pressure on not only Bo, but himself. And so when we saw this past year, Bo was okay, but he didn't really elevate himself the way people thought. I think that was, really a negative consequence for Gus, given the way he hyped him up and the way he thought he could develop him. And so, it's not Harsin's guy, but he is inheriting the situation. And so he's going to have to figure out a way to elevate Bo's play to get Auburn to that next level.
Yeah, that's a great way to frame it up. overhyping your quarterbacks, man. And when that doesn't pan out and you're an offensive guru, so to speak, that's a bad deal for the fan base. It reminds me, and you can probably relate to this, having made a stop in Mississippi, it reminds me of Rick Stansberry. As good as Rick was, he was notorious for overhyping some of the recruits coming in, and you got to pump the brakes on that at times. I will say this, John, we bring on analytics guys, and John Talty, by the way, joining us, senior sports editor, AL.com. He joins us on the Shiner Bach guest line. Our analytics guys tell us that Derek Mason is off the charts as a play caller and defensive coordinator. So I know that Auburn and Alabama doesn't even follow Vanderbilt football, and I know he wasn't good as a head coach, but he was excellent at Vandy and Stanford as a play caller. I think Harsin hired an A to A-plus coordinator, John.
I totally agree. I mean, I think it's one of the best hires that anybody made in the SEC from an assistant level. He was a guy who had multiple opportunities. You know, South Carolina was very interested in him. And, you know, poor Shane Beamer, Brian Harsin just rated all his top guys. But I think it's a great hire. And I think that's, you know, you were losing a guy in Kevin Steele who did a great job at Auburn. And as everybody knows, there's obvious reasons why Kevin Steele couldn't stay at Auburn. But I think Mason was a really strong hire for Harsin. And again, when you're an offensive guy like Brian is, you need somebody on the other side of the ball that you can trust and is going to be able to deliver at a high level. And I think Mason's going to be able to do that for him.
John is okay, so Steele jumped to Tennessee for like a week and a half. Has he been hired since? I can't remember.
I think not that I've seen. So I think he's
wow.
kind of, you know, I know he wants to coach, but I think right now he's just kind of, you know, collecting all that money he's made from getting bought out by Auburn and, you know, that brief stay at Tennessee.
Didn't he make like $900,000 for 2 weeks at Tennessee or something? Something insane.
He did. Yeah, he did. And at the end of the day, it didn't change things that much because he was going to get paid that money eventually by Auburn anyway. So really he saved Auburn some money by taking that job at Tennessee.
Gotcha.
But yeah, he got paid $900,000 for basically doing nothing.
Okay. So look, you've been in this Bama deal for how many years have you been at AL.com now? Time flies.
Close to 7 now.
Good grief. All right, so you've been living this dream or craziness of following Nick Saban and the Alabama Crimson Tide. How do you explain to people what it's like to cover Alabama on a daily basis and then add Saban in their success, John?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's such a national program at this point. I think that there are fans all over the country. I think certainly in the state, it's the most important thing that happens. And people expect a high level of success every single year. And it's obvious. I mean, they've had, you know, he's won more national championships than anybody, and they expect a national championship every single year. And so anytime there is a loss, and it's very, very rare, but when there is one, it feels like a funeral in the state. You know, everything shuts down and people freak out and they wonder why it went wrong. But there's a general expectation every single year that they will win a national championship. And obviously they did this past year. And I think this past year, given just all the things happening in the world and all the challenges and all the questions about whether there was even going to be a season, I think it's probably the team that Nick Saban enjoyed the most. And I think it's the team that maybe fans enjoyed the most just because of the guys on the team and all they had to get through to get to the finish line of winning a national championship.
What's more important? A kid commits to Alabama in football today, or the fact that they're the best basketball team in the Southeastern Conference?
It's still a kid commits. I mean, we're still a football state here, and we're hoping that. I mean, I grew up in the Northeast, and so I grew up around college basketball, and so I think we're starting to see increases in interest in it. And certainly, I mean, I think Nate Oates has done a great job.
Phenomenal.
I think he's going to continue to elevate that program. But it's, you know, what we always think about here is that attention typically turns to basketball in February after signing day. That's when I feel like the average Alabama fan says, all right, football's over now. Now I can turn my interest to basketball. And so that's certainly very different than what it is in probably the state of Kentucky, where it's, all right, football season's over now. Now we can focus on the important thing.
Right. Man, they've got a heck of a basketball team. Okay, break down your Bama Auburn. John Talty, senior sports editor, AL.com. Break down your Bama to Auburn coverage? I mean, is it 60-40 Bama? How does it fall?
I mean, I think we try to do it evenly. I think certainly there's more interest in Alabama. It's more of an Alabama State than Auburn. I think that the way typically I think about fans is I think, there's more of a broad fan base around Alabama than there is Auburn. I think Auburn typically, I feel like we find there's more direct tie, whereas I think Alabama, because it's just the program, you have, fans all over the world who just know of Alabama and Nick Saban. And so, I think there's always going to be a lot of interest there. And I think the other thing that we do a lot of is covering guys who've gone on to play in the pros. And, nobody has done a better job than Alabama over the last decade of putting guys into the NFL and guys who are relevant in the NFL. And so we do a lot of coverage around that. And, I think fans, they don't stop caring about these guys once they leave. I mean, a lot of people care a lot about, whether it's Jalen Hurts or Tua or even A.J. McCarron still, guys who have gone on to the NFL, there's still a lot of interest in following those guys and what they do.
So, John, how many on a big Alabama? Well, take out COVID, okay. So on a normal big SEC weekend where Bama's playing Georgia or LSU or something, how many people do you have working / covering Alabama Crimson Tide football?
Yeah, I mean, so again, it's pre-COVID. I would say, say it's a national championship or SEC championship. I mean, we would send, 10 plus people to those games.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, so there'd be times where we would have more people than any organization other than ESPN, which has all their production people. But
Sure.
in terms of pure writers and things like that, we would typically have the most.
Wow. All right. What do you think about? I think it's a bigger blow than Bama fans want to admit. I think Sarkisian was excellent. Bill O'Brien may be fantastic, but Kiffin and Sark are by far and away his best play callers, in my opinion. Way. And people believe Sark's slightly better than Kiffin. Whatever. That's splitting hairs. But I think the Sark thing, he could be difficult to replace. How do you see it, John?
No, I mean, I totally agree. And I feel like the fact that we're even having this discussion, I think, shows how good Nick Saban is hiring replacements. I mean, think about it. Steve Sarkisian was the best assistant in America last year, won the Burroughs Award, gets the Texas head coaching job. And we're even debating whether there's going to be a drop-off because of who they hired. I mean, any other program in the country, it would be an obvious drop-off. And here he hires a guy who was an NFL head coach last year. So, I mean, that kind of, I think, shows just how great of a system Saban has and the desirability for guys who want to work for him. I think that, to me, Sarkisian was the best offensive coordinator he's ever had. I think he and Wayne are similar in terms of play callers and how brilliant they are. I think Steve was a little bit better in terms of actually developing guys and kind of working behind the scenes, but both were certainly incredible during their time at Alabama. And I think I think there will be questions about, what Bill O'Brien can do, back in the college game. But I do think that's, about as strong as a hire you could possibly have. So even if there is a drop-off, which I think there could be, especially in that first year, I mean, again, getting a guy who was a head coach last year in the NFL to be your offensive coordinator, I think, it's pretty strong. And I think he'll do a pretty good job in Tuscaloosa.
Bama Auburn insider John Talty, senior sports editor, AL.com on the Shiner Bot guest line. John, you mentioned growing up in the Northeast and following college hoops. I loved it as a kid, even growing up here in the heart of the Sun Belt. Who was your team growing up in college hoops?
So my dad went to Villanova, so I was always a Villanova guy. Yeah.
Dude, I'm older than you, a lot older. And so when Raleigh Massimino, I was pulling for Nova in 80, whatever that was,
85.
85.
Yeah.
Okay, so John Thompson, I mean, Georgetown was unbelievable. I had an opportunity to spend a week on that campus and so on. But that upset was insane for me as a kid. And then what Jay Wright has done there, George Clooney's younger brother, is nothing short of amazing. So you've been a big Nova fan for years, huh?
Yeah, and so I went to so I was a huge Villanova fan, and then I went to the University of Maryland, and so that time was ACC, Gary Williams, and so that's kind of what I grew up around. But yeah, I mean, I remember as a little kid. I mean, was born after the '85 game, not that much after, but after. And I remember as a little kid watching that game on VHS all the time. Just
I love
watching '85 national championship, and remember going to Alabama, not Alabama, Villanova team reunions with Raleigh and stuff like that, and getting a chance to meet him. And so I love what they did, and it's just going to Big East basketball games in the '90s and 2000s, and it was just something else.
Oh man, yeah. McLean was the point guard. Pickney was the post player. I think I have that right. There were some other pieces to the puzzle, and then watching Raleigh Massimino run around after they had won was unbelievable. And John Thompson was like a foot and a half taller than Raleigh Massimino. Incredible. All right, buddy. Hey, thanks for your time. Let's do it again in a couple of months. Glad everything's going well. Keep up the good work.
Sounds good. Totally down to do it.
All right, bud. John Talty, senior sports editor, AL.com, on the Shiner Bach guest line, talking a little War Damn Eagle and Roll Tide. As you know, Mississippi State and Ole Miss play Auburn and Bama every year, being in the SEC West. So let's, how about that? Nova, that's not a bad deal. His dad goes to Nova, and they've won, 2 national championships in the last 5 or 6 years, Blake?
It's not bad.
Golly, Jay Wright's done a great job with that. They're so fun to watch. That North Carolina championship game several years ago was unbelievable. That was like one of the epic championship games, heavyweight fight. North Carolina had more NBA players, but Nova was junior, senior laden and just filthy as far as basketball IQ, had played together a lot. And, of course, the dude hits the three-point shot over there just on the right side of the court there. Amazing game. And, golly, that had been Roy Williams' 4th? Didn't he rip off 3 pretty quick at North Carolina? That wouldn't have been good because I think Krzyzewski's still sitting at 5. It's been a little threat to the Godfather.
Seems
so to
like
speak.
It's been a long time since Krzyzewski and Williams have commanded the national title picture.
Well, they're in that Calipari shuffle. It is extremely difficult to go through that many ones and dones. Whereas Nova and Gonzaga have kids that stay, even if you stay one more year, Blake,
it's huge difference.
We don't put
huge
enough
difference.
emphasis on that.
Yep.
But if you have kids that stay 2 more years after their junior year, like we were talking about Nova, do you realize we looked it up that morning? I don't think you had quite joined the show yet, but one of Nova's recruiting classes was ranked like 73rd.
Mm-hmm.
We took like 3 or 4 going into the title game, and one of their recruiting classes was ranked 73rd. But they had super-duper skilled basketball players who had played a ton of hoops with good coaching and a junior senior-laden team, and that gave them the opportunity to beat a North Carolina team that was also very, very talented. And as you mentioned, they won another one like a couple of years later. I mean, it was like, right, won one, didn't win it, and won it or something, or maybe 2 years, 3 years later. Oh, man, I love it. I'm ready for March Madness. You took it away from me last year.
Huh.
I am, and I didn't know we're playing Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
Yeah, Hopwood let us in on that yesterday.
Yeah.
That was surprising.
Director of the sports book of the Golden Moon Casino, Chris Hopwood.
See how that affects because it's always been kind of that like tongue-in-cheek holiday of Friday, because it would start Thursday, and so people would be tuned in Thursday, and then Friday, like nobody would really work because you'd have basketball all day. Well, now if it starts on Friday and it goes on Monday, that'll be weird, It'll be a little different.
Hey, Jackson Prep's job is open in football.
Yeah, I applied.
You should have. You'd be great there.
I could coach.
Parents would love you.
Well, first off, we'd never lose.
I'm not kidding.
We'd never lose.
I am kidding.
We'd win every game, so yeah, they'd love me.
Mm.
We would run an offense that was designed, within the last time someone who's playing for the team actually was born, because it feels like they haven't done that in the last probably 20 years. So that'll be a new step in the right direction.
Madison Central has a new coach, Toby Collins.
Which one would you rather coach at, MC or Prep?
Prep.
Dude,
but here's why.
The shadow.
MC's a good job.
But the shadow.
I understand.
Yeah.
But Prep, I mean, they always have the They always have more. They have a bigger enrollment. They have more players.
It's reachable expectations versus Madison Central, who seemingly, for some reason or the other,
there's some Michigan and Georgia in that. It's a wonderful school. It's great people. I know graduates, and then I run with a bunch of parents who send their kids there. They do a good job. It's not the job that it was in 2000, and I think people struggle to shake that. But what do I talk about all the time? As guys, once we lock into something in sports, how difficult is it for us to shake it? What we think about a player, what we think about a coach, what we think about a team, what we think about a place, franchise, owner, AD, whatever.
Yep.
Once we say this is it, we are hard-headed and stubborn to move off of that. And while it's a good job, the expectations are still really high, and they consider themselves a powerhouse, but they really haven't done powerhouse stuff.
Nope.
The last 20 years. So it's kind of like you telling me that Michigan's a powerhouse, and then I counter with, okay, in the last 20 years, how many Big Ten titles do you have, and how many just college football playoff appearances?
Yeah, or BCS
let's not
appearances.
Even go
anything.
or BCS. Yeah. Let's not even go national natties. They're very difficult to win.
They're not even.
How many times have you been there?
And MC can't get there. That's the remarkable stat. They can't get out of their state championship game. Essentially,
they said that you should hire Jeremy Pruitt as your defensive coordinator at Jackson Prep.
I mean, we dominate.
You could serve asparagus and see if he ate it.
Yeah.
What if you ordered sushi one day and you had Jeremy Pruitt as your DC?
He wouldn't know what to do. Jeremy is the guy where if you go to a sushi place, he orders fried rice and that's it. Right? Seriously, so we
want some of that shrimp tempura.
Yeah, we'd run four
is
wide.
That sushi? Sorry.
No, we'd run 4 wide and we'd run a 3-4 and we'd blitz every play. Just do something about it. Stop it. We'd beat everybody by 50. No holds barred.
Oh man.
It'd be 2 games. Well, that's what it always is. It comes down to 2 games. It comes down to JA and MRA.
Right. Yes.
And it used to be 1 game. When I was growing up, it was 1 game.
Yeah.
Now it's 2 at least. So there's some more parity, I guess. But yeah, it's not a shot at MRA, but if MRA can run the offense they're running, then Prep and JA should be able to run the same offense. That's not a shot at MRA. That's a shot at Prep and JA for not running that offense.
They've done some cool things on the offensive side of the football at MRA. Yeah. But see, Blake, when 9 to 10 kids are touching the ball on Friday night, it makes it fun. You see what I'm saying?
Well, we've talked about this.
When you got the quarterback touch it, then you got a couple of running backs either running it or catching it, and then you got the receivers and the tight ends, really getting into it, and it just makes practice and everything else so much more fun.
It's the same with basketball. If you don't have everybody moving around that fluidity, it's what are we doing?
Yeah, Russell Westbrook, the ultimate ball stopper, or Carmelo Anthony.
James Harden.
If you miss Mike Bianco on the show, it's on Apple Podcasts. Search the Out of Bounds Show. The webcast video is on our Facebook page. Would love for you to go to our Facebook page, search the Out of Bounds Show, or YouTube, search Out of Bounds Sports. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. If you're thinking about premium meats, cheeses, and hummus, well, think Boar's Head. Delicious, delicious premium meats, cheeses, and hummus. It starts and ends with Boar's Head. Compromise elsewhere. You can find it at Kroger, Corner Market, and many, many other grocery stores. The Out of Bounds Show is powered by Boar's Head. Compromise elsewhere. We'll see you.